How's it going? I'm Jared Gillis. Welcome to another All About RVs. Today, we're talking about electric heat for the RVs. There's been a lot of questions about it lately. Will it burn down my RV? Is it a strain on my RV electrical system? Are there different types of electric heaters out there that I can use? So today, I want to share with you what you really need to pay attention to and the information that you need. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right into it. So now on this topic of electric heat inside of the RV, you have two ends of the spectrum. Number one, this is really simple. You have an electric heater, you have a way to plug it in, heat your RV, quit trying to make this complicated. On the other side of the spectrum, you have these things are extremely dangerous. They shouldn't be anywhere near RVs, and it's going to burn your RV down if you use it. So today, I'm gonna share with you how we have used electric heat inside the RV for years and what we did in order to do it safely. There's some really practical things that should be considered because it can be dangerous, but you can also definitely get some benefit out of it while keeping it extremely safe. So let's get into our first one, which is know your circuits. This is a big one because RVs are not built by default with space heaters in mind, because these are a big draw that can cause big problems. So for our RV, we had basically one circuit for our GFI receptacles and one for almost all the other accessible outlets inside the RV. So basically one circuit that you're going to be using for this. So you plug in a couple of these, you're way overloaded on that circuit. And this is the heater that we've used inside the RV quite a bit, and this is a 1500 watt heater, which is going to be pretty typical to the heaters that you find out there. We'll get more into why that size can be a problem, but let's get back to the circuits. Number one, we go around and we label what circuits are tied to what breaker. This is pretty simple. Turn off the breaker that says receptacles, go around with something that you can plug in. I have an outlet tester, so I can plug it in, see which outlets are live, which ones are dead, and I know that it's going to be on that breaker. If you have other outlets that are still live, find out which breaker those go to. This is where we saw the majority of the outlets inside the RV are tied together, so we did a quick modification and added a circuit right next to our electrical panel. So it didn't have to run wires far across the RV. I added a breaker inside the panel and put an outlet right next to the panel. That way I know that that outlet is dedicated to that breaker. When I plug in a heater into that space, I know that it's the only thing that's going to be on, because it's really easy to overload a circuit when you plug in a heater and there's other things on that circuit at that same time. So putting in a dedicated circuit that you're going to be using for your heater is a great idea. Keeps it really simple that you know that what is on there is the heater and not other things drawing off of it, possibly overloading that circuit. So that's the first modification that we have done for using space heaters inside the RV. Which brings us to the second thing to consider, which is outlets inside the RV are typically garbage. They're junk. Looking at an RV outlet, looks like it was designed to be cheap, easy, and compact, and it delivers on all three of those. But looking at the internal components, you can see that those wires are just pressed down in there to make that connection. So it's a fairly weak connection. Compared to a residential outlet, you have those screws on the side, and being able to connect your wire to that, it gives you a really solid, secure connection with a lot more contact on that wire to the outlet. Definitely bulkier and bigger, wouldn't work in a lot of RV walls, but a better, more secure connection. So I ran a test comparing this outlet to a residential outlet because I wanted to see how much more heat was generated in this, because that's the problem that you're gonna have with these. The heat can lead to a fire. So running it and checking the temperatures, it really never got above 87 degrees on the inside of the outlet, and the front was barely warm to touch. So it actually performed better than I thought. So then I did the residential one, and it was about the same numbers, getting about the same temperatures on the connection as I did on the RV outlet. This was really surprising for me that it performed just as well as the residential outlet, but if you were gonna ask me if I was going to trust the connection in this long-term compared to a residential outlet, hands down, every time I'm going with the residential outlet. So much that I've been replacing a lot of the outlets inside of our RV with residential style outlets, just like behind the fireplace, because the fireplace is basically just a space heater. The thing that we have going for us there is it's a dedicated circuit, usually for the fireplaces. So years ago, this is an outlet that we swapped out, got away from the RV outlet and put in that residential outlet, something we felt more confident in long-term because we use the RVs so much. Now, really the outlet is just a portion of the equation of what we should know. So the next big part of that equation is your heater. You should know your heater. Both of these sitting right here are rated at 1500 watts. So when you purchase them, it's looking like a 1500 watt space heater, even though this one's smaller or shorter than this taller one. but I know that this one draws less than this one does, but not all of them are going to be the same. So some of them might draw over 1500 watts and some might draw under. On the back of here, we have a stamp that says 1221. So I'm assuming that that's pretty close to what this one's going to draw. So that's something that we really need to figure out, because you never want to assume what one of these is going to draw. So if you want to know exactly what your heater is pulling, I would highly recommend getting something like this. This is a kilowatt device. I wouldn't run the heater through this all the time, but this will give you the information so you can find out what it is on high, what it is on low, and what it's going to be drawing. So you plug this in, you press the watt button, and you turn on your heater, and it'll tell you how many watts are going through this device. Put it on low, you'll find out exactly how many watts it's going to be pulling when it's on that setting. So like I said, a 15 amp circuit, the max is 1800 watts. If you want to take 80% of that, that's 1440 watts. If you're pulling over that, you shouldn't run it continuously for long extended periods of time. That's when you need to dial it back, get it off that high setting, and get it to the low setting. And continuous is considered 3 or more hours of use, because the more that you run your outlets to the limit and they're heating up and getting hot inside and then cooling down, heating up, cooling down, it's gonna heat up even easier the next time. There's gonna be resistance in there, and that's gonna create more heat. And then the vicious cycle begins until you end up with burning up this outlet, if you're lucky, and tripping the breaker or starting a fire. So all those you want to avoid. So knowing your equipment, what is inside the RV, what your circuits are, and what your heater actually is, will give you a lot of information of how capable you are of using that device inside the RV, and for how long you should be using it. So here's an example of what we do. We'll use the fireplace on high in here. We'll use it for a couple of hours on high, but if we want to leave it on for extended periods, we'll drop it down to that lower setting. Still get heat out of it, not as much, but still get heat out of it, and know that we're not really putting that continuous load on that circuit for extended periods of time. So the important number to remember is that 1440 watts. If you're going to be above that, don't run it continuously. If you're going to be under that, you're going to be better within those limits. And really, this applies to a home as well. So if you're a weekend warrior, this is good information for your home as well. Now, a pretty popular modification that's out there for overcoming some of these hurdles to use electric heat in the RV is to run an additional power inlet into the RV to a dedicated outlet. What people will do is they'll run an extension cord to the 15 or 20 amp outlet on the pedestal, bring that into the RV to a dedicated outlet, and then you can plug in your electric heater into that. So if I'm gonna think about this critically, there's situations where that can be helpful, and then there's gonna be situations where it's really not helpful and could just be creating more of a problem area that needs to be maintained. So the first scenario where it can be helpful is if you're on a 30 amp service or you have a 30 amp RV and you're trying to free up some of that space, because you can get to those 30 amps really quick in an RV. And if you have a dedicated circuit for that off of this 20 amp outlet inside the pedestal, it gives you the ability to be able to do that. If you have a 50 amp RV, you've just pushed that another maintenance item to another area on your RV. If you've seen pictures or videos of people having burnt up plugs or the inlets on the side of the RV burnt up from using space heaters inside the RV, it's a reminder that this is also a potential weak point, and you should be checking for heat at this location and or the back of this inlet as well. And if you wanted to upgrade this inlet connection, you can go with the RV Smart Plug. It's better contacts, very secure, definitely an upgrade from this unit. But regardless, this unit and this, even if you have the RV Smart Plug, you shouldn't go over that 80% for continuous use. But for us, I know that we run 2 ACs in the summertime, so we should be able to run at least a space heater in the wintertime, which is a bit of an understatement because our original ACs drew more than our space heaters do. The difference is we have 20 amp breakers inside the RV dedicated to those ACs. So back to our first points, if you set it up with dedicated outlets for space heaters, it's going to be safer. The thing with the additional power inlet into the RV that I think that some people might miss is that you've added another point of maintenance. Because oftentimes in winter, these connections are going to be out in the elements, in the cold and the rain and the snow, and condensation on the contacts from the cold weather temperature swings really causes a problem. And that's when we need to make sure that we have good electrical contacts at every point on the exterior connection on both sides of our extension cord to the RV. So we've gone over this in the past, being able to use deoxit to clean those contacts, making sure that it's not a loose or a weak connection. Those are the types of things that are really going to mess up that 50 amp connection. And if you have an additional electric cord coming to the RV, that's one more thing that you should check on, clean, maintain, and make sure that you're getting good connection there. So if you have a 30 amp service, it can be helpful so that you're not hitting the limit of a 30 amp service, but on a 50 amp RV with a 50 amp service, it may not be necessary. Just setting things up properly can go a long way. But now the next thing we need to consider is the types of heaters we use in the RV. Because even with paying attention to all these details that we've just talked about, there's still types of heaters that are kind of on my go, no-go list. There's actually only 2 electric heaters that we'll use inside the RV when we're away from it. Number 1 is going to be our heat pump. We'll use our AC when we're away from the RV, and the heat pump's no different from that. But the heat pump isn't going to take you to extremely cold temperatures, so it's going to be more in that 32 degrees and above, which is going to put you into some of these other heaters. So the other electric heater that we will use when we are gone is the extreme heaters. And I'll explain why, because it's a bit controversial this year. But first off, this is not sponsored in any way by Extreme Heaters. They are sold on eTrailer, which is a sponsor of this channel, but this is not in any way sponsored by the Extreme Heaters. But as always, there are going to be links down in the description to everything that we're talking about. So if you're looking for a heat pump, I know that eTrailer has those. They also, like I said, have the Extreme Heaters. They have a lot of great stuff for winter RVing. We did a video on a lot of the stuff that they have for cold weather RV use, like dehumidifiers that work even better in the cold than most, or no power options for dehumidification, heated hoses, all of those kind of things. Links are going to be down in the description. But let's get back on track and talk about the extreme heaters. So we've been using it for a couple of years, but we use it on the RV in a very specific way and situation. It's a tool that fits a very specific niche for us. We mount it in the underbelly of our RV. Yes, that underbelly is heated by our furnace when we're using it, but when it gets extremely cold, even with running the furnace, we still would have pipes freeze near the kitchen sink. And what we found out is by having this extreme heater in that underbelly, when we would hit down in the single digits, we didn't have issues with that pipe freezing anymore. We tried other things, insulation, redirecting the ducting down there. It just wasn't enough heat getting down there in order to make sure that those pipes didn't freeze. And with that extreme heater, we're able to mount it underneath there, which is something that most other space heaters are not going to be able to do. The other thing we discovered from using it for a couple of years is that it made the inside of the RV more comfortable in those extreme conditions. So it's not like it made it feel like we had heated floors in here. It didn't go that far, but it didn't feel like as much heat was getting sucked out of you through the floor while it was so cold outside. Now, here's the good and bad with this heater, because I've seen it marketed for you don't have to winterize your RV, you can just use this heater and it's completely safe. So number 1, all the safety things that we talked about previously, dedicated circuits, knowing what your draw is going to be, the outlets, and all those things, that still is going to play into this. You don't get a free skate in that area just because you're using this brand of heater. The second thing is, I would never try and use an electric heater to winterize my RV. It's just not possible, not practical, it's just not the reality. And the third thing is they are extremely expensive, but when you look at them and the niche that they fit in, there's really not a ton of competition there, so that's why the price is so high. Now, there is a handful of things that stood out to me about this heater, why we feel comfortable using it in this way. The first one is the mil-spec rating for humidity, vibration, and extreme temperatures. The next one is the IP68 waterproofing, meaning that this one can be temporarily submerged. The next one is the fail-safe design. It has a PTC heating element, meaning that it's self-limiting and it can't overheat. When the element heats up, the resistance rises, which naturally reduces the temperature rise, which reduces the chance of overheating. So it has fail-safes built into it, but the heating element itself is its own fail-safe. And it's also rated to go in engine compartments where there can be flammable fumes. It's convenient that it has a built-in thermostat to keep things above freezing, and the fact that it's mountable. Not all space heaters are mountable, so where we put it inside the RV, we're not worried about it tipping over or moving or shuffling around when we're moving the RV. With all those things compiled, I view it as like a tool that has a very specific purpose. So for me, I think the problem that I would have is just not trying to overstate what it does or how to use it, and really seeing what it does and how it fits a niche, for RVs and for boats. So you can see that we have an entire strategy for using electric heat inside the RV. We don't just plug in a space heater and use it and say everything's great and fine. We want to go through the RV, remove the pitfalls, the weak areas, and the problem spots so that we can use electric heat in the RV and do the maintenance on the cord and the elements around the RV so that we're not going to damage the RV in any way. And being mindful for how long we're running it, and if we're at the RV or away from the RV, that we're turning those electric elements off. And I should have mentioned from the beginning that we still use our furnace because it does so much for keeping the plumbing safe in freezing temperatures. But using electric effectively can help you extend the amount of propane that you have so you're not having to fill up as often. And some even say it's almost like free heat because you're paying for it at some parks. But either way, you'll be going through less propane. Now, if you wanted to take all this to the next level and heating the inside of your RV in extreme cold, skirting went a really long way for us in making it more comfortable inside of the RV. But that's definitely something that you're going to use when you're going to be staying somewhere a little bit more long-term. But when we did that, it made a world of difference. So we have a video on that if you want to see how we skirted our RV and how it really didn't cost us that much, but made a big difference. So anyways, I think that's going to do it for today. Hope you guys enjoyed this. Hope that it helped you out in some way. So as always, if we don't see you on the road, hopefully we will. See you next video. Take care.